1,000 years. That's how long it took to build the structures you're about to see. Not because the builders were slow, not because they lacked skill, but because the vision was so massive, so completely beyond what any single human lifetime could accomplish, that generation after generation had to show up and keep going. Today, I'm counting down 7 of those structures. The ones that took the longest. The ones with the most shocking stories behind them. And I promise, by number 1, you will not believe what human beings were capable of. Let's go. Number 7. And I'm starting here because of one statistic that stopped me cold when I first read it. This temple, right here, is the largest religious monument ever built by human hands. Not the largest ancient one. The largest one, ever, in all of recorded history, and most Americans have never heard of it. This is Angkor Wat, Cambodia, and the story behind it is wilder than you think. Angkor Wat covers 400 acres. Its outer wall is nearly a mile long on each side. The moat surrounding it is 623 feet wide, wider than 2 football fields laid end to end. But here's the number that gets me. There are nearly half a mile of continuous hand-carved narrative scenes on these walls. Half a mile of sculpture, carved by artists who spent their entire lives working on a single section, and then passed their tools to their sons. Why did they build something this massive? The answer involves a king who wanted to compete with the gods themselves. Construction began around 1113 AD under Khmer Emperor Suryavarman II. He wasn't just building a temple to Vishnu. He was building a model of the Hindu universe with his own tomb at the center. The 5 towers represent the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the home of the gods. The moat represents the cosmic ocean surrounding the universe. He wanted to live forever, and in a way it worked. His name is still spoken 1,000 years later. Building the initial structure required an estimated 300,000 workers and 6,000 elephants over 30 years. The sandstone blocks, some weighing several tons, were floated 25 miles down rivers on bamboo rafts. But here's what most people miss. Angkor Wat wasn't just one king's project. Over the next 400 years, from the 900s to the 1400s, ruler after ruler added to the complex. Converted from Hinduism to Buddhism. It survived invasions. The surrounding city of Angkor was the largest pre-industrial city on Earth, home to nearly 1 million people. When the Khmer Empire finally collapsed in the 1400s, the jungle swallowed everything. For centuries, Angkor Wat sat hidden, roots splitting through stone, trees growing through courtyards, until French explorers stumbled on it in the 1800s and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Today, over 2 million people visit every year. Buddhist monks still live and worship here, making Angkor Wat one of the only ancient structures in continuous religious use for nearly 1,000 years. Number 6 is in Europe, and it has one of the strangest construction stories I've ever come across. They literally stopped building for 400 years. For centuries. And the reason why is fascinating. For 400 years, from 1473 to 1842, Cologne Cathedral sat half-finished in the middle of one of Germany's busiest cities, with a giant medieval crane frozen at the top of an incomplete tower, just sitting there. For 4 centuries, it became so iconic that the city put the unfinished crane on its official seal. Cologne literally made its failure into its logo. This is the story of a cathedral so ambitious it broke the entire economy of a medieval city, and still got finished 632 years later. In 1248 AD, the Archbishop of Cologne had one goal: build the greatest Gothic cathedral in all of Christendom. Bigger than anything in France. Taller than anything in England. The ultimate statement. The early construction went well. The choir was completed. The chapels were stunning. But Gothic architecture at this scale was brutally expensive, and Cologne's medieval economy simply couldn't sustain it. By 1473, the money was gone. Workers went home. The crane stayed. Here's what no one talks about. The original 13th century blueprints were never lost. They survived 600 years, rolled up in storage. And when construction resumed in 1842, the builders used those exact same plans. The 19th century brought German Romanticism, and with it, a national obsession with reclaiming medieval glory. German nationalists decided that finishing Cologne Cathedral was a matter of national pride. Funding came from across the country. The Prussian king himself donated. And crucially, those original blueprints were found. The 19th century builders had the extraordinary advantage of finishing someone else's 600-year-old vision, almost exactly as the medieval architects intended. When the last stone was placed in 1880, Cologne Cathedral became the tallest structure in the world at 516 feet, holding that record for 4 years until the Washington Monument surpassed it. Here's the detail that haunts me about this cathedral. During World War II, Allied bombers destroyed nearly 90% of Cologne. The city center was rubble. And yet, the cathedral took 14 direct bomb hits and survived. Those medieval stone walls absorbed the blasts. Allied pilots reportedly used the twin spires as a navigation point while bombing the city around it. The cathedral that took 632 years to build became a landmark for destroying everything else. Today, 6 million people visit Cologne Cathedral every year, more than any other site in Germany. Daily Mass is still held inside. Number 5 is a wall, but not the wall you're thinking of. The real story of the Great Wall of China involves a myth that nearly every American believes. That is completely false. We'll bust that in about 2 minutes. Quick question. Can you see the Great Wall of China from space? No, you cannot. NASA confirmed it. Multiple astronauts confirmed it. The wall is too narrow to be seen from orbit with the naked eye. This might be the most widely believed false fact in American classrooms. Now here's the real myth-busting. When was the Great Wall built? Most people say around 200 BC. And that's technically true for the first major wall, but the wall most tourists visit today, the dramatic stone wall snaking over mountain peaks, almost all of it was built in the 1400s to 1600s. That's the medieval period. Less than 600 years ago, the ancient Great Wall you've seen in photos is younger than the Cologne Cathedral we just talked about. The full story spans 2,000 years, and it's much darker than any school textbook told you. The earliest walls date back to the 7th century BC, individual Chinese states building their own defenses, made of rammed earth, not stone. In 221 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang unified China and ordered his general to connect them all into one continuous frontier barrier. Around 300,000 soldiers and equal numbers of civilian workers were conscripted. The death toll was catastrophic. Historians estimate hundreds of thousands died during construction, from exhaustion, exposure, accidents, and disease. Many were buried within the wall itself. Ancient Chinese historians wrote, "The wall is a dragon built on the bones of the dead." There's a legend, probably the most famous folktale in Chinese history, about a woman whose tears were so powerful they caused the wall to collapse. It's not just a story. It's the grief of a civilization turned into mythology. Meng Jiangnu's husband was conscripted to build the wall. He died there. She traveled thousands of miles to find his body. When she arrived and wept over the wall, her grief was so powerful that a section collapsed, revealing his bones. The emperor, moved by her sorrow, offered to marry her. She agreed on one condition: a proper funeral for her husband. After the ceremony, she walked into the sea. That story has survived 2,000 years because it carries something true. No monument this size is built without a cost that can't be calculated in stone. The complete wall system totals over 13,000 miles. It would take 18 months to walk the entire length. Contains roughly 30,000 watchtowers. When enemies approached, fire signals could travel hundreds of miles in hours, an ancient communication network. Over the full 2,000 years of construction, historians estimate between 400,000 and 1 million workers died. That's not exaggeration. That's the scholarly consensus. Number 4 has been under construction longer than any other structure on this list. We're talking 1,300 years. And the reason it kept growing is because of an architectural arms race between Egyptian pharaohs, each one trying to outdo the one before. 30 pharaohs, 30 rulers of ancient Egypt, spanning 1,300 years. And every single one of them looked at this temple complex and thought the exact same thing. I can make it bigger. What they created is the largest ancient religious site ever built. The medieval Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris could fit inside just one of its halls. I mean that literally. The centerpiece of Karnak is the Great Hypostyle Hall. 54,000 square feet. 134 stone columns arranged in 16 rows. The tallest columns are 80 feet high, 8 stories. Each column is so wide that 10 people holding hands cannot encircle it. When you stand inside, even in ruins, even without the original paint, you feel something that I can only describe as being genuinely small. And that was the entire point. The pharaohs wanted you to feel like an insect in the presence of gods. Here's something wild. These columns were originally painted in vivid colors. Blues, reds, greens, gold. The stone-gray ancient Egypt we picture in movies is completely wrong. Karnak at its peak looked more like a Times Square display than a museum. Construction began around 2055 BC, 4,000 years ago. Early pharaohs built a small shrine. Then the New Kingdom pharaohs arrived and everything escalated. Thutmose I built the first massive gateway towers. His daughter Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most remarkable rulers, erected 2 100-foot obelisks of solid granite. Then her stepson Thutmose III, after her death, tried to erase her legacy by building walls around her obelisks so nobody could see them. History's pettiest renovation project. Ramesses II, the pharaoh associated with the Exodus story, built his own additions and then had his name carved over inscriptions left by previous rulers. The Egyptian version of deleting someone else's social media post and claiming it as your own. This kept going for 1,300 years, right up until the last pharaohs of ancient Egypt, just before the Roman conquest, made the final additions around 47 BC. In 2021, Egypt completed a decades-long excavation of the Avenue of Sphinxes, a 1.7-mile road lined with hundreds of ram-headed stone sphinxes connecting Karnak to the Luxor temple. This road had been buried under the modern city for centuries. Shops, houses, roads, all built directly on top of it. When Egypt reopened it with a grand ceremony, actors in ancient costume processing down a path pharaohs walked 3,000 years ago, it was one of the most remarkable archaeological moments of the decade. Something ancient, buried and forgotten, brought back to life. Number 3 was conquered by crusaders, converted to a mosque, converted to a museum, and then converted back to a mosque, all in the last 800 years. This one has more drama than any Netflix series. When Emperor Justinian I walked into this building for the first time in 537 AD, he spread his arms, looked up at the dome overhead and said, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." He was comparing himself to King Solomon, the man who built the most sacred temple in the ancient world. And Justinian genuinely believed he'd built something greater. For 1,000 years, he was right. The Hagia Sophia was the largest cathedral on earth for a millennium. Everything about this building starts with the dome. 182 feet wide, 180 feet tall from the floor. The largest dome in the world for nearly 1,000 years after it was built. Ancient engineers faced a problem. A dome this size would collapse inward under its own weight. So they invented a system of half-domes and arches to transfer the weight outward and down. A solution so elegant it had never been attempted at this scale before. The result? Standing inside, the dome appears to float. Ancient accounts describe it as suspended from heaven by a golden chain. The 40 windows around its base flood the interior with light, making the dome seem to have no visible support at all. The original dome didn't last 30 years. An earthquake collapsed it in 558 AD. The rebuild was actually better. The engineers raised it higher and improved the support system. The catastrophe made it stronger. Built in just 5 years, 532 to 537 AD. By 10,000 workers, the Hagia Sophia's construction story is less about building time and more about what happened afterward. 537 AD, Eastern Orthodox Christian Cathedral, the spiritual center of the Byzantine Empire. 1204 AD, Catholic Crusaders sack Constantinople. They convert it to a Roman Catholic church for 57 years, looting priceless treasures and destroying Byzantine mosaics that had taken generations to create. 1453 AD, Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II conquers Constantinople. Within days of entering the city, he visits Hagia Sophia. For minarets are added. Christian art is plastered over. It becomes a mosque. 1934 AD, the Turkish Republic converts it to a secular museum, a symbol of modern Turkey's separation from religious identity. 2020 AD, Turkey converts it back to a mosque, a decision that triggered international controversy. No structure on this list has been fought over, claimed, converted, and reclaimed more times than Hagia Sophia. It is not just a building. It is the entire 1,500-year history of the world's most contested city, written in stone. Number 2 is on a tidal island in France, and the sea around it moves so fast it can literally swallow a person. Medieval pilgrims died trying to reach it. That danger was part of the point. The tides here move faster than a galloping horse. The sea can recede 9 miles at low tide, revealing a flat, shimmering expanse of sand. And then it rushes back in, fast. Medieval pilgrims who misjudged the tide didn't survive. The quicksand around the island could swallow a man whole. And still, for 1,200 years, millions of people made the crossing. Because what's on that island was worth dying for. Mont Saint-Michel is a granite island that rises 260 feet from the sea off the coast of Normandy, France. On top of it sits an abbey, a Benedictine monastery, that has been continuously inhabited by monks for over 1,300 years. According to legend, in 708 AD, the Archangel Michael appeared 3 times to the local bishop, instructing him to build a church on the rocky island. The bishop ignored the first 2 visions. On the third appearance, according to the story, the archangel pressed his finger into the bishop's skull, leaving a permanent hole. That got his attention. The engineering here is extraordinary. The granite island is too narrow at the peak to support a large abbey. So medieval monks built 4 separate chapels inside the mountain itself. Essentially, they built several churches underground to create a platform for the church on top. Construction began with a simple 8th-century oratory. Carolingian rulers expanded it. Norman dukes, the same Normans who conquered England in 1066, funded major new construction. By the 11th century, a full Romanesque abbey church stood at the summit. Then came La Merveille, the Marvel, a Gothic masterpiece built in the early 13th century in just 17 years, considered one of the finest examples of Gothic architecture anywhere. Its cloisters, a garden of delicate stone columns hanging above the sea, are breathtaking even today. The construction continued, fortifications added during the 100 Years' War, a prison phase during the French Revolution, a 19th-century restoration that added the famous gilded statue of Saint-Michel at the very top. During the 100 Years' War, English forces occupied virtually all of Normandy. Every French fortress fell, except one. Mont Saint-Michel, surrounded by those lethal tides, never surrendered. A garrison of just a few hundred men held it for 30 years against the English siege. The island's natural defenses made it virtually impregnable. Today, over 2.5 million people visit per year. A small community of monks and nuns has returned to the abbey, continuing a tradition of religious life that stretches back 1,300 years. And now, number 1. Every other structure on this list was built for kings, emperors, or gods. Number 1 was built for ordinary people walking. And today, hundreds of thousands of them still make that same walk every single year. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people walk into this cathedral in the far corner of northwestern Spain. Some have been walking for weeks, some for months. Some have crossed the Pyrenees Mountains on foot, covering 500 miles of trail. When they finally see those towers rising above the plaza, some of them collapse. Some cry. Some fall to their knees in the middle of the square, because they've completed the Camino de Santiago, and the destination, the building that pulls millions of people across a continent on foot, was built, expanded, and perfected over 800 years. Beneath this cathedral, according to Christian tradition, lie the remains of Saint James the Apostle, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, martyred in 44 AD. His relics were brought to this remote corner of Spain and buried. A shrine was built. Pilgrims started coming. By the medieval period, Santiago de Compostela was one of the 3 most important pilgrimage destinations in all of Christian Europe, alongside Jerusalem and Rome. People came from England, France, Germany, Italy on foot for months, risking their lives on medieval roads. The original church was completely destroyed in 997 AD by a Moorish military leader. He burned it to the ground, and yet, he left the tomb of St. James completely untouched. Even he respected what lay beneath. Construction of the current cathedral began in 1075 AD. The Romanesque interior, those thick pillars, rounded arches, the sense of solid medieval weight, dates from the 11th and 12th centuries. The Great Portico de la Gloria, a carved stone porch considered one of the masterpieces of Romanesque sculpture, was completed in 1188 by a craftsman named Master Matteo, who reportedly worked on it for 20 years. His self-portrait is carved at the base, looking inward, the only medieval craftsman who insisted on being commemorated inside the building he built. Gothic chapels were added through the 1300s and 1400s. And then, in the 1700s, came the transformation that made it iconic. The Baroque facade. Towers 230 feet tall, covered in ornate stone carving. Theatrical, dramatic, overwhelming. Completed in 1750, it turned the cathedral's entrance into one of the most spectacular architectural statements in Europe. Inside the cathedral hangs one of its most famous features, the Boda Fumero. An enormous silver incense burner, one of the largest in the world, that hangs on a 200-foot rope. During High Mass, 8 men in red robes work together to swing it across the transept. It reaches speeds of 40 miles per hour, trailing clouds of incense smoke in wide arcs over the heads of thousands of pilgrims. It was originally installed for a completely practical reason. Medieval pilgrims who had walked for months through mud and sweat and wilderness needed serious help before entering a sacred space. The church invented a theatrical solution, and it became the most memorable moment of the entire pilgrimage. In 2019, before the pandemic, over 347,000 people completed the Camino and received their Compostela certificate. They came from 180 countries. Some were devout Catholics. Many were not religious at all. Some were grieving. Some were celebrating. Some just needed to walk. They all walked through the same door that pilgrims walked through in the 12th century. 800 years of building. Still going. Still full of people. That's why it's number 1. 7 structures. 7 civilizations. 7 different answers to the same impossible question. What do you build when you know you won't live to see it finished? What I keep coming back to is this. Every person who laid a stone in these buildings, every stonemason in medieval Cologne, every craftsman at Angkor Wat, every conscripted worker on the Great Wall, they did it anyway, knowing they'd never see the end, trusting that someone after them would carry it forward. That's not just ancient history, that's a choice that every generation makes or doesn't. Which one of these 7 hit you hardest? Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want a full deep dive on any single one of these, let me know which one and I'll make it. If this video was worth your time, share it. It's the biggest thing you can do for this channel. See you in the next one.